Chris, here we are again at International Payments Summit. You're obviously in charge of a lot of these sessions today. What are you seeing as the main themes emerging?
Well, it's building on what we've seen in previous years, but in particular uncertainty about the world economy and in particular the Eurozone. A lot of concerns about what that means in competitiveness with the rise of Asia. A view around technology impact, and in particular mobile, and the fact that mobile isn't a channel or a device, it's actually a complete ground shift in the whole way you think about how consumers and corporates deal with transactions in commerce. And overall, a feeling that the investment space is difficult to track. Do you go down the route of looking at the Eurozone, for example, with confidence in delivering SEPA, or do you just completely ignore that and invest in rethinking your offers into iPad apps?
It's interesting because in previous years we talked about mobile as some sort of external thing, a technology shift, but in fact in some of the sessions here we're seeing it really embedded properly as a way of thinking almost. And is that going to lead to actual proper innovation or more talking?
Well, I think it's to do with almost 20 years ago we started talking about mobile and mobile payments because the mobile telephone had just appeared and we're thinking, oh, will that impact financial services? By the end of the 90s we were talking about delivering WAP-based banking and services like that. Eventually, through an evolution, we reached a stage where everyone now accepts that they have to bring ubiquitous location-based 24/7 access to finance to the point of where the customer is living their life, which is not necessarily even a mobile, it's any chip-based device. It could be their car, it could be their TV, it could be their fridge, it could be anything. It's what Peter Hinson's just talked about in The New Normal, saying we used to think technology was the novelty, now it's the normal. Now it's the normal, how are you going to change your business to adapt to it?
And one of the interesting things about it sort of ties in with what you're saying about the rest of the world. Sitting in Europe, we tend to, through SEPA and everything else, be very almost insular, especially with the economic problems. But mobiles are actually taken off enormously in the rest of the world. How does that play with some of the other things you're talking about here in terms of connectivity for the payments industry worldwide?
I think everyone accepts that real-time payments on a global platform basis for everything from a micropayment for an iTunes download to a corporate cash netting and pooling switch from Hong Kong to London is the world we now live in. And the infrastructure provides that capability. And if the financial institutions don't deliver that capability, non-bank financial institutions will come in and offer those services. And so that's the fundamental shift. Everyone's saying it used to be that we could sit back and not worry too much about the competitive drive to deliver those capabilities. Now, that is the problem. There's a vote this morning, for example, that said who are you worried about the most, and the second most worrying development is the Google Internet companies, style operators, coming in and offering real-time global payments. That is a true concern.
Which is odd, because they keep saying they don't want to compete with the banks. They want to move on to other areas and be more embedded in the customer and become part of the customer's life in the new normal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the challenge is where do banks fit in the new normal and in their own future? One of the presenters, Wilco Dado from RBS, was saying we should get out of low-value payments. Another presenter, Inika from Rabobank, who I know you'll be interviewing, said actually that's our core space. And I think what it's saying is that banks are redefining and shifting their role to see where their real competencies and capabilities lie, and then trying to leverage those capabilities and competencies. Some will say that Google is a partner, their client and an opportunity. Others will say that they're stealing their lunch, and therefore they're frightened of them. It's really down to where is your competitive force and capability and competency, and how do you leverage your infrastructure and technology and consumer or corporate client interface to make sure you have relevance.
And in terms of infrastructure, this is the first IPS that we've been to when we've actually had an end date for SEPA in sight. Is that going to make a difference in terms of being able to move on?
Well, I like SEPA a lot because we can set goalposts and then move them.
Absolutely.
And I'm fairly sure that regardless of the end date, will there be compliance? If there's not compliance, how will it be enforced or policed? Who is doing the enforcing and policing and making sure it's in place? Even if it is in place, that's just the banking community. The corporate community is going to sit there and say we don't really care unless the banks deliver that for the corporate community. Therefore, there's no corporate motivation. The public authorities, utilities, authorities are also sitting there saying, well, right now we're more concerned about the Eurozone banks being in existence in the future, let alone delivering an infrastructure. So it's not really the best place to be in right now.
So the Eurozone itself, that's one of the other key backdrops we've got.
Oh yeah.
I've known in the past you've made some fairly dire predictions about it. Where are you standing on it now?
Well, Hamish McRae, who's an economic editor with the Independent newspaper, said that he thinks the Eurozone will implode by 2017 because there will be another wave of issues and there will be therefore another challenge. Certainly the Eurozone won't have a problem for 3 years because the ECB's just pumped in €1 trillion in short-term loans to stop up the gaps. But is that the proverbial Dutch boy putting his finger in the dike, or is it actually going to plug the gap? I think it's the Dutch boy with the finger at the moment. And the question is therefore, what's going to happen in the 3 years to make sure that you cement the block barriers so you don't get the flood coming back through in 3 years' time? I haven't seen that coming in yet. And until that's there, with this decisive action from the Merkozy, German, French stance, the Eurozone's still got big issues.
Yeah. So that's going to be the first question I'll ask you next year at IPS 2013. Right, thank you very much, Chris.
Cheers, David.
Cheers.